In Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather, the sinister Virgil Sollozzo, known as the Turk, attempts to have Don Vito Corleone assassinated. He fails, and instead, Vito is left injured. His son Michael decides to visit him at the hospital, but is shocked to find that the hospital is spookily empty, aside from seemingly one nurse. All of the guards that were guarding Vito have disappeared. Michael knows what's up, phones his brother to inform him, and then has his father moved to a different room. With a little help from Enzo the baker, Michael makes it look like Vito is still being guarded to those who have arrived to finish the job. Suddenly, the place is swarming with cops, and out of the shadows steps Captain McClusky. Michael asks him where the men guarding his father are, and it appears McClusky had them all arrested. When Michael openly accuses McClusky of being paid off by the Turk, he gets decked by the captain, and very quickly Tom Hagen arrives with men and checkmating McClusky with legal threats. The captain is visibly furious but is forced to concede the situation. We learn that Sollozzo essentially has the captain as a bodyguard. That makes him untouchable, as to get to him you'd have to kill a police captain, which would bring down so much heat from the law and the media that the other families would wage war on the Corleones, which of course is what ends up happening when Michael blows away both Sollozzo and McClusky. Today I wanted to take a look at the backstory of Captain McClusky from Mario Puzo's original novel. The book of course delves deeper into the characters, and on this channel we've taken a look at the backstories of Luca Brasi, Al Neri, Mo Green, Peter Clemenza, Don Fanucci and others, so be sure to check out those videos and subscribe to the channel while you do so. The following is a passage from the book which takes place just before Sollozzo picks up Michael Corleone for their sit-down. It offers a peek into McClusky's background growing up, his psyche and even his real opinion of the Turk. Have a listen. Captain Mark McClusky sat in his office fingering 3 envelopes bulging with betting slips. He was frowning and wishing he could decode the notations on the slips. It was very important that he do so. The envelopes were the betting slips that his raiding parties had picked up when they had hit one of the Corleone family bookmakers the night before. Now the bookmaker would have to buy back the slips so the players couldn't claim winners and wipe him out. It was very important for Captain McClusky to decode the slips because he didn't want to get cheated when he sold the slips back to the bookmaker. If there was 50 grand worth of action, then maybe he could sell it back for 5 grand. But if there was a lot of heavy bets and the slips represented 100 grand or maybe even 200 grand, then the price should be considerably higher. McClusky fiddled with the envelopes and then decided to let the bookie sweat a little bit and make the offer first. That might tip off what the real price should be. McClusky looked at the station house clock on the wall of his office. It was time for him to pick up that greasy Turk, Sollozzo, and take him to wherever he was going to meet the Corleone family. McClusky went over to his wall locker and started to change into his civilian clothes. When he was finished, he called his wife and told her he would not be home for supper that night, that he would be out on the job. He never confided in his wife on anything. She thought they lived the way they did on his policeman's salary. McClusky grunted with amusement. His mother had thought the same thing, but he had learned early. His father had shown him the ropes. His father had been a police sergeant, and every week father and son had walked through the precinct, and McClusky Sr. had introduced his 6-year-old son to the shopkeepers, saying, "And this is my little boy." The shopkeepers would shake his hand and compliment him extravagantly and ring open their cash registers to give the little boy a gift of $5 or $10. At the end of the day, little Mark McClusky would have all the pockets of his suits stuffed with paper money, would feel so proud that his father's friends liked him so well enough to give him a present every month they saw him. Of course his father put the money in the bank for him for his college education, and little Mark got at most a 50-cent piece for himself. Then when Mark got home and his policeman uncles asked him what he wanted to be when he grew up, and he would lisp childishly, "A policeman," and they would all laugh uproariously. And of course later on, though his father wanted him to go to college first, he went right from high school to studying for the police force. He had been a good cop, a brave cop. The tough young punks terrorizing the street corners fled when he approached and finally vanished from his beats altogether. He was a very tough cop and a very fair one. He never took his son around to the shopkeepers to collect his money presents for ignoring garbage violations and parking violations. He took the money directly into his own hand. Directly because he felt he earned it. He never ducked into a movie house or goofed off into restaurants when he was on foot patrol, as some of the other cops did, especially on winter nights. He always made his rounds. He gave his stores a lot of protection, a lot of service. When winos and drunks filtered up from the Bowery to panhandle on his beats, he got rid of them so roughly they never came back. The tradespeople in his precinct appreciated it, and they showed their appreciation. He also obeyed the system. The bookies in his precinct knew he would never make trouble to get an extra payoff for himself, that he was content for his share of the station house bag. His name was on the list with the others, and he never tried to make extras. He was a fair cop who only took clean graft, and his rise in the police department was steady, if not spectacular. During this time, he was raising a large family of 4 sons, none of whom became policemen. They all went to Fordham University, and since by that time Mark McClusky was rising from sergeant to lieutenant and finally to captain, they lacked for nothing. It was at this time that McClusky got the reputation for being a hard bargainer. The bookmakers in his district paid more protection money than the bookmakers in any other part of the city, but maybe that was because of the expense of putting 4 boys through college. McClusky himself felt there was nothing wrong with clean graft. Why the hell should his kids go to CCNY or a cheap southern college just because the police department didn't pay its people enough money to live on and take care of their families properly with? He protected all these people with his life, and his record showed his citations for gun duels with stick-up men on his beat, strong arm protection guys, would-be pimps. He had hammered them into the ground. He had kept his little corner of the city safe for ordinary people, and he sure as hell was entitled to more than his lousy 1 C-note a week. But he wasn't indignant about his low pay. He understood that everybody had to take care of themselves. Bruno Tattaglia was an old friend of his. Bruno had gone to Fordham with one of his sons, and then Bruno had opened his nightclub, and whenever the McClusky family spent an infrequent night on the town, they could enjoy the cabaret with liquor and dinner on the house. On New Year's Eve, they received engraved invitations to be guests of the management, and always received one of the best tables. Bruno always made sure they were introduced to the celebrities who performed in his club, some of them famous singers and Hollywood stars. Of course, sometimes he asked a little favour, like getting an employee with a record cleared for a cabaret work license, usually a pretty girl with a police dossier as a hustler or roller. McClusky would be glad to oblige. McClusky made it a policy to never show that he understood what other people were up to. When Sollozzo had approached him with the proposition to leave old man Corleone uncovered in the hospital, McClusky didn't ask why, he asked price. When Sollozzo said 10 grand, McClusky knew why. He did not hesitate. Corleone was one of the biggest mafia men in the country with more political connections than Capone ever had. Whoever knocked him off would be doing the country a big favour. McClusky took the money in advance and did the job. When he received a call from Sollozzo that there were still 2 of Corleone's men in front of the hospital, he had down into a rage. He had locked up all of Tessio's men. He had pulled the detective guards off the door of Corleone's hospital room. And now, being a man of principle, he would have to give back the 10 grand. Money he had already earmarked to ensure the education of his grandchildren. It was in that rage that he had gone to the hospital and struck Michael Corleone. But it had all worked out for the best. He had met with Sollozzo in the Tattaglia nightclub, and they had made an even better deal. Again, McClusky didn't ask questions, since he knew all the answers. He just made sure of his price. It never occurred to him that he himself could be in any danger, that anyone would consider, even for a moment, killing a New York City police captain was too fantastic. The toughest hood in the mafia had to stand still if the lowliest patrolman decided to slap him around. There was absolutely no percentage in killing cops, because then all of a sudden, the hoods were killed resisting arrest or escaping the scene of a crime, and who the hell was going to do anything about that? McClusky sighed and got ready to leave the station house. Problems, always problems. His wife's sister in Ireland had just died after many years of fighting cancer, and that cancer had cost him a pretty penny. Now the funeral would cost him more. His own uncles and aunts in the old country needed a little help now and then to keep their potato farms, and he sent the money to do the trick. He didn't begrudge it, and when he and his wife visited the old country, they were treated like a king and queen. Maybe he would go again in the summer now that the war was over, and with all this extra money coming in. McClusky told his patrolman clerk where he would be if he was needed. He did not feel it necessary to take any precautions. He could always claim Sollozzo was an informer he was meeting. Outside the station house, he walked a few blocks and then caught a cab to the house where he would meet with Sollozzo. So there you have it. It's not the most mind-blowing of backstories like Luca Brasi or Neri, but it is interesting nonetheless, and maybe it was time McClusky was able to carve out a little video for himself on the channel. He appears to have a bit of a warped sense of morality. It's clearly entrenched in the cop culture of old of being on the take, and though he didn't overdo it, he certainly enjoyed the privileges that came with his position. What do you make of Captain McClusky? And whose backstory do you want to see next? Let me know down in the comment section below. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell for more videos, and thanks for watching.